Hello and welcome to the third lecture in IELTS speaking. In this lecture, you will learn about the evaluation criteria that IELTS interviewer follows when they test your speaking skills. I hope you watched the interview intently. I also hope the three different parts of the tests are clear to you. Now, as indicated earlier, let's discuss the evaluation criteria. During the discussion, try to concentrate on the given interview and compare it with the points that we discuss now. Let us now talk about the evaluation factors or criteria which the aspirant must concentrate on while appearing for the speaking test. First evaluation criteria is fluency and coherence. Second is lexical resource. Third is grammatical range and accuracy. And the fourth is pronunciation. Let's learn about them one by one. The first one is fluency and coherence. Let's begin with fluency and coherence. The question I ask, what is fluency? Whenever this question is asked, people usually say the speed with which a person speaks is fluency. If it is true, then I can form a sentence which would say, cat mat bat rat sat, and claim to be fluent. See, I can speak with speed and my speech satisfies the basic definition of fluency. But is it fluency exactly? Am I fluent? No. The real problem is that whenever you were taught about fluency, you were given examples of newsreaders. You were told, look, how fluent are they? As a result, most of the students think that the faster I speak, the fluent I sound. Now, if I speak like a news anchor, would you understand a word out of my mouth? No. But does that mean I am not fluent? No. It means I am fluent. It's just that as a news anchor, the news presenter cannot take a pause as it may break the continuity or the flow. However, as a teacher, to ensure that you absorb my words, I must take relatively longer pauses in between. So, what is fluency? Fluency is the ability to convert ideas into words. If you're fluent, then naturally you will be able to convert your ideas into words without any issue. If you're fluent, you need not struggle for correct words or sentence structures to convert ideas into words. The fact that you might hesitate while speaking clearly points out that you are not fluent. The next question is, what is coherence? Coherence means rationality in speech. The answers should be easy to understand as well as they must make sense in the context of conversation. Also, the ideas should be in logical sequence. In other words, you must avoid an abrupt introduction of sentences or ideas or should avoid any deviation in ideas while speaking. For this purpose, proper linking devices should be used, ensuring uniformity and consistency in the answers. Overall, to simplify the above discussion, it can be said that there are four very important requirements if you wish to score well on IELTS speaking. First is logical answers. Second is rare repetition of ideas. The third is rare hesitation. And the fourth is rare self-correction. Let's investigate these one by one. The students must offer logical answers to the question satisfactorily. This means that the answer given by the students should be relevant to the topic of the question. It is observed that many students start the answer well but drift off to random topics, making the rest of the answer irrelevant and illogical. Even though your awareness in any subject will not be tested, it is important that you should not expect to get a higher band even after mentioning commonly known facts incorrectly. This is the most important aspect of speaking test. If your answer doesn't satisfy the question sufficiently, then you are not communicating well. And if you cannot communicate well, the rest of the things don't matter. Moreover, the candidate should make sure that the ideas mentioned earlier are not repeated in the later parts of the answers. Repetition of ideas makes the answers boring and show that you do not have necessary control over the speech. Further, the candidate should not hesitate while speaking. You may hesitate because you are not sure that the answer satisfies the question completely or not, or probably you are not sure what you wish to communicate can be communicated using the sentence structure that you are using. In the end, irrespective of the reason, hesitation shows that you are not able to convert ideas into words and hence lack fluency. Lastly, the number of self-corrections should also be rare. In some cases, it may happen that you may realize in the middle of the answer that you have committed a mistake or that your sentence structure does not reflect what exactly you mean. In such cases, if you stop in between a sentence and start a new one, correct one, the listener is confused. He may doubt whether you are continuing the same topic or have changed the topic. Such mistakes are called self-corrections and must be avoided as far as possible. In case you must correct what you have been speaking, you should at least use signal words which indicate either continuation or discontinuation of the subject of discussion. These sentences or these phrases could be what I mean is, or to put it in other words, these show continuation of thought process or the idea. Now let's look into the second criteria, that is lexical resource. Lexicon means language or dictionary. Hence the resource related to language is called as lexical resource. From observations, one could say that IELTS looks for three main points while judging lexical resource of any student in speaking section. First is variety of words or rare repetition of words. The second is precision in using these words. The third is apt usage of typical phrases, idioms, and collocations. Firstly, let's discuss the rare repetition of words. The examiner wants to judge your ability to use a variety of words while speaking. Unfortunately, many students believe that they must use hi-fi words. However, it is essential to realize that the purpose of IELTS is not to identify walking talking dictionaries or to find next Shakespeare. It simply wishes to distinguish people who can speak English well from the ones who cannot. Also, since you don't know these rare words, most of you may not be able to use them properly. Such misuse may lead to penalties in the final scores. To illustrate this point, consider the verb increase. It is one of the most commonly used words. Can you give me synonyms of the word increase? You may pause the video and think about it. The synonyms of the word increase could be rise, raise, grow, expand, extend, enlarge, climb, surge, multiply, elevate, ascend, add, and so on. You might have just realized that you know many words, yet the question is how many of them do you use? For most of the students, the answer is hardly one or two. The second important point to remember is precision, that is the apt usage of the vocabulary. The candidate may use a high level of vocabulary, but if it is not used in the right context, the intended meaning changes. Such inappropriate usage of the words might affect your scores adversely. Let's continue the previous example with synonyms of the verb increase. Do we say salary hikes or salary rises? We say salary hikes, right? What is wrong with salary rises? While both rise and hike talks about increase in vertical direction, rise is continuous increase whereas hike is increase in steps. Your salary doesn't rise rupee by rupee or dollar by dollar. Rather, it increases in chunks, and hence we say that salary hikes. On the other hand, we say the sun rises since the rising of the sun is a continuous process. Also, tell me which is correct. The trees grow or the trees expand? The trees grow, right? Why? While expand and grow both talks about an increase in all directions, grow is used for living beings in general and expand is used for non-living things. It is essential that you can account for these shades of words while using these terms precisely. Such precision underlines your command over the language. Thirdly, you will be awarded a higher band if you are able to use phrases, idioms, and collocations in the sentences. Phrases are typical groups of words that are used together. Moreover, the phrases mean exactly what the words indicate. I'm about to send a letter. In this sentence, I'm about to is a typical phrase that can be used to tell what you intend to do soon. On the other hand, idioms are phrases that imply a meaning beyond the words used. For example, playing the violin is tough. It's not my cup of tea. Here, what I mean is that I cannot play the violin. The intended meaning is clear through the idiom, it's not my cup of tea. But it does not say directly, it implies. A collocation is a pair of words used together more often than not. Office desk, bright day, cold winters are all collocations. It might happen sometimes that the interviewer asks a few questions that are mainly related to the local culture. So, while narrating such incidents or referring to the local events or concepts, use English words as much as possible. So, in Diwali, a festival of light celebrated in Indian subcontinent, don't say we light diya. Rather, you say oil lamps. At the same time, substituting few words is tough. For example, a specific cuisine made only in your country or geography. In such cases, you may use that word but don't forget to explain the word in English so that a native speaker would understand the meaning of the sentence. For example, in the exam, you could be asked, would you like to recommend a traditional meal to foreigners which is famous in your country? You may answer the question as I definitely would. I belong to the state of Maharashtra, which is in India, and very popular delicacy which is prepared in our community, especially during festivals, is modak. It is very similar to dumpling and it is made from jaggery and fresh coconut. Now let's look into the third criteria, grammatical range and accuracy. Grammar is the base of any language. In this criterion, the correctness of grammar is checked. It includes the accuracy of the tenses, articles, prepositions, adjectives, adverbs, etc. It is said that in order to use a language, it is important to have command over its tenses. For example, if the student is asked about his hobbies during childhood, he must use the past simple tense to illustrate the hobbies in childhood, or in other words, in the past. To score better on this criterion, you must use the tenses correctly. The examiner also wants to see whether the candidate can use a variety of sentences while speaking. Some students make use of only simple sentences. A better band can be achieved by using compound and complex sentences. Now let's look into these sentences one by one. A simple sentence is quite basic. It just has a subject and a verb. The red house is beautiful is a simple sentence as it has just a subject and a verb. Complex sentences, on the other hand, contain a main clause and one or more subordinate clauses. Most of the students don't remember clauses. So, in simple terms, whenever you wish to give extra information about an idea, you can use complex sentences. For example, the red house, which was built in 1932, is beautiful. In this sentence, the red house is beautiful is the essential message and hence it is the main clause. Whereas house was built in 1932 is extra information about the idea. Since the part of the sentence which was built in 1932 depends on the rest of the sentence for its meaning, it is called as subordinate clause. You can give extra information using many subordinate clauses about an idea. Lastly, the compound structures have two or more main clauses. They may or may not have subordinate clauses. In simple words, whenever you have two pieces of information about an idea, you should use compound structures. The red house was built in 1932, but it can still sustain an earthquake is a compound sentence. Here, the red house was built in 1932 and it can still sustain an earthquake are two different pieces of information about the same red house. So, it makes sense to put them together. At the same time, understand IELTS examiner doesn't count the number of simple, complex or compound structures used by a student. They rather look at the apt usage of these sentence structures. Now the last thing that IELTS examiner looks for in your IELTS speaking test is pronunciation. This criteria is related to how well do you pronounce a word. Overall, there are four important aspects that IELTS interviewer pays attention to. Firstly, your speech must have understandable and acceptable sounds. Secondly, your speech should have a rare influence of mother tongue. Thirdly, the speech must have appropriate pauses. And lastly, you must have rare filters. Let's look into these aspects one by one. The students should make sure that the sounds of the words are understandable and acceptable. To illustrate it better, let's look at the word luggage. Now, instead of saying luggage, if I pronounce the word as luggage, would you even understand anything? The answer is no. IELTS doesn't accept such variations in pronunciations of English words. At the same time, there are some pronunciations which are understandable but unacceptable. For instance, the word stomach. Now, instead of pronouncing it as stomach, I say stomach. You might realize that this guy wants to say stomach, but who would accept it? The answer is nobody. So, you must have understandable and acceptable sounds. Taking this advice to an extreme, many students believe that they must have a British accent to score well. However, from experience, I can say that you need not be worried about your accent. However, at the same time, keep in mind the influence of mother tongue on your speech should be very rare. For example, some people say school instead of school due to the influence of their mother tongue. Such mistakes should be avoided. Moreover, while speaking, you need to ensure that you take appropriate pauses. Pauses mainly serve two purposes. Firstly, appropriate pauses help the listener to understand your speech well. The audience can make out comfortably where a sentence begins and where it ends. However, the question is how you decide where to take a pause. Remember a simple tip. If you were to write all sentences that you speak, wherever you would place a comma or a full stop, you should take a pause. Secondly, pauses offer a breather for the speaker. If you speak continuously for a long time or you take inappropriate pauses, you might not be able to breathe properly in between. If you don't breathe properly, your mind will force you to switch to your mother tongue. In such cases, many people start using words from their mother tongue in between without even realizing it. Lastly, your speech must have rare fillers. However, what are fillers? The fillers are sounds that are so repetitive that the listener cannot concentrate on the communication and hence they are distracted. Typical sounds like ha after every word can be distracting. Not only these sounds, but some words which are repeated too often can act as filler. Typical words such as you know, actually, or basically, or any other for that matter, when used in every sentence, it might work as a filler. I'm sure you know at least one person who uses these words so often that it becomes an issue. Now, after learning about the evaluation criteria, many students ask, how about eye contact, body language, or even clothing? Don't they count that in the exam? Now, IELTS doesn't say that the examiner would be keenly looking for these things or not. However, from experience, I can say that you should not worry too much about these things. Having said that, ensure that you maintain sufficient eye contact. You should not stare at wall or don't stare at the examiner as well for too long. It might make the person uncomfortable. Moreover, remember, as far as your body language is concerned, it should not be very distracting. The examiner won't pay much attention to it unless and until it is distracting. Lastly, on the exam day, as far as the clothing is concerned, I would recommend a formal attire. Now, you need not suit up, but some formal clothes would definitely suit the occasion. Some students who are not very comfortable with shirts and trousers may even try a t-shirt and jeans. Ensure that you wear a pair of shoes to the interview. In summary, you have learned that IELTS examiners look out for four important evaluation criteria. As far as the first criteria of fluency and coherence is concerned, you need to answer the questions logically, ensure that there are rare repetition of ideas, rare hesitation, and rare self-correction. As for the second criteria, lexical resource, make sure that you can use range of words with precision. Also, don't forget to use typical phrases, idioms, and collocations without referring to local language words. Then comes the third criteria, grammatical range and accuracy. While speaking, ensure that you use appropriate tenses while explaining a particular situation. Additionally, make sure that you use variety of sentence structures. Lastly, the fourth criteria is pronunciation. According to IELTS, you must have understandable and acceptable sounds with rare influence of mother tongue. Additionally, you must have appropriate pauses in your speech as well as rare fillers. IELTS examiner will assign a score on the scale of 0 to 9 on each of these criteria. At the end, individual scores in individual criteria are taken into account to find the average of 4. This average is assigned as your final score in the speaking section. Each criteria has equal weightage. Now, in the next chapter, we shall develop a strategy of dealing with part 1 in the actual IELTS tests.